Hi there, Madison High School students, English 232ers. Welcome back to yet another fun semester of online and asynchronous learning. Yay! We're so excited to be here today. And so I'm sorry that it took me a few hours to get this out to you. I wanted to make sure that I had all my ducks in a row, and it's a little bit strange because we're in an online format, and so we don't get a chance to see each other's faces first thing. So, since we are starting a new semester, I know that some of you have probably done some poking around the Moodle today, which is wonderful. Um, as you are getting started for this week, I wanted to take some time in this video to just kind of go over some of our key points that we'll be going over so that we're all on the same page. And then I'm going to show you some information about Native American Lit and let you get started. So, first and foremost, I'm really happy to have you guys back. You all have made so much progress, and I can see that you're going to make even more progress as we go along. So, I'm really excited to see that. Okay, so as you are looking at the Moodle, you'll notice that the format is pretty similar to last semester. So, I won't go over the format. What I do want to go ahead and show you is that there are a couple of different things that are available to you here. One, you've got your syllabus, and we also have our to-do list. And so those are going to be things that you need to familiarize yourself with the most. I have a tendency to not read over the syllabus with my classes in a lot of detail because I do know that you are smart enough to read and accept those things on your own. However, I want to go over a couple of key highlights for this course and welcome you into this environment where we're going to be doing some things that are a little bit different from last semester. And since we're going to be exploring American literary traditions, we're both going to be kind of adding in some history, some art, humanities, and lots of conversations that are coming together. So, the first thing that I want to call your attention to is the textbook. So, I know that some of you may have an outdated textbook. Um, so, we will be using the 10th edition. And so, you need to have volumes C, D, and E. And if you have older editions, some of the readings may not be in there. So it is probably in your best interest to get a hold of the newer editions or ask your principal at Madison High School to make sure that your class has newer editions, just so that you can actually have access to the readings. There are some readings that are not in the older editions, and I've learned that through actually like doing the class a few times. So just so that you know, there are some readings that may not be in there if you have an older edition. So getting a newer edition is going to be very helpful for that. Okay, so as we would move down here, I want you to take a chance to read the letter that I wrote you. I sent it out to you on Friday, but it kind of gives a little bit of an overarching view of what our class is. We're going to be using a lot of like multimodality. We're going to be looking into American literary traditions as both who's telling the story, who's not telling the story, what voices are represented, what voices are not represented. And since it's American literature too, we're going to be starting from the Civil War and moving on. So, as I'm going through this, I'm trying to just kind of gloss over some things. So, take time to read through it if you haven't done so. But this is the grading criteria. So, most of this is pretty straightforward from last semester, but I did want to call your attention to that you're going to have literary responses or reading responses. You'll have five of those. They're about 1 page long. They're like 1 page kind of response paper, so to speak, like a CER paragraph. And you'll have those periodically for the readings in the first half of the semester. The other core assignments that you'll see that we will have a muckraking persuasive speech, we'll have a presentation, we'll have a literary analysis assignment, and then at the end, we'll have an Unheard Voices in America presentation and written response. And so the only big thing that you need to take with you that's different from last semester to this semester is late policy stuff, which is that you will need to make sure that if you have not completed a formative assessment for the week, just so that you know that you will only be able to turn in those assignments within the week that they are due. Okay. So formative assessments, as in responses, um, forum posts, completion work. Okay, so those will not be able to be recouped later. So if it's done within the week that we do it, then it will be accepted. But after that, you'll lose the opportunity to do that because it is formative work and it is a completion credit. That is not the same rule as core assessments because core assessments do measure mastery. So just keep that in mind as you are pacing yourself out. Um, I did have some folks in your class who kind of tried to do formative work kind of at the last minute last semester. That's just not how I roll. So if you don't get a chance to finish something in the week that we do it, let it go. Do better the next week. That's what we're focusing on. So in this section, I've got some information about the core assignments that you're going to be expected to do. Um, we're working on literary analysis, poetic analysis, presentation skills. We're working on persuasive work, and then just overall, like more synthesis ready work. So I won't go over the entire like outline, but I did want to kind of show you like how each week will be kind of structured. And there may be some variation from week to week on the syllabus, and so I'll make sure that that's clear. But generally speaking, you'll have a little blurb up here about what you are doing. And then you've got uh, anchor text, context text, and choice text. What this means is you may have an anchor text, which is like the one that everybody's going to read for the week. And it might be a smaller selection or a bigger section. You will have a context selection, which is like historical information or historical context. And then you'll have some choice text of like, you can choose this or this or this or this. The goal with that is to give you a little bit more variety so that you can be held accountable for the same text with everybody, but then at the same time have some variety in what you read. So this is the first time I'm doing it. We're going to give it a shot and see how it goes. So um, this week, what you can expect that will be your like overall assessment is that we're going to be focusing on Native American lit, doing some forum posts or discussion based posts on Native American literature as like a way for us to discuss the text asynchronously. And then you'll be doing a reading reflection on the text. So, what's a reading reflection? Okay. So, this is something that we dabbled in a little bit in 112, and we're going to capitalize on a little bit more into 32. One-page reading responses, also known as response papers, CERs, they can come in a variety of names. But in theory, in practice, not theory, in practice, these will be places for you to experiment and work on developing your writing, your style, your voice, and your precision in a way that's taking a complex and argumentative approach to the text that we're reading. So that means that, and so you're going to have one page, you're going to use scholarly articles, and you're going to have a very controlled thesis about what you think the literature is saying about something within the context or within like our universal experience. So right here we have I have an example one of what it looks like that you can use as a placeholder so that you can experiment with that. And this will be something that we do every couple of weeks. And so this one will be doing Native American literature. Um, and so going back to our lovely page that we have here for our Moodle is that what your job is this week then is I'm going to go through the PowerPoint, but you are going to read the Ghost Dance songs. You're going to read The School Days of an Indian Girl for context, and then you can choose doing the Sarah Winnemucca excerpt or reading some Cherokee myths. The Cherokee Myths document is a link to Project Gutenberg, and so it has a lot of Cherokee myths with different types of myths, different origins. And so when you're going through that, you can kind of just pick like a couple to read. You don't have to pick more than that. There's a lot. And so just a couple to read would be more than sufficient. And then the only thing that you have to make sure that you do is you're going to, for formative work, is you're going to upload an annotation of Joy Harjo's "Remember," which is a poem with your interaction of it. So those are our tasks for the week. So please reach out to me if anything in there is unclear. So just so that we can all kind of start um, on the same page, I'm going to give you just some information about Native Lit. And so here are our readings for the week yet again. I have some really great informational pieces. This is an NBCU Academy discussion on Native American heritage. And then this is The World on Turtle's Back, which is an oral tradition story. And so, as you're going through the readings this week, some things that you want to kind of think about Native American lit is kind of casting off the idea of the Thanksgiving story, right? So, the fairy tale plays, the white gaze about um, people dressing up in feathers and face paint. We want to instead kind of look through this as like a cultural lens, right? So we are looking at literature as a historic witness of this group of people. We're looking at their oral tradition and how their legends and songs and rituals have been passed down, and then how they've been impacted by colonization. You'll see that in a lot of native lit, we're going to see that there are going to be themes of nature and sacredness of land, but then there's also the post colonization identity of like identity and belonging, history, memory, spirituality, the loss of language, the idea of being marginalized in the literary canon. Those are things that are also going to come up as opposed to just celebration of the earth and the traditions. I'm going to skip a couple of these. So, in here, I wanted to just let you know that just for the interest of time and Zoom fatigue, I'm going to skip over some things. There are some great links on this PowerPoint that I do very much encourage you to go into more detail about to just kind of get yourself some acclimated to like what the first encounters looked like, um, and how the narrative of native folks has been written. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I will pull out a couple of selections as I talk. So, the reality of the story is that the story of Native Americans is largely Eurocentric. And so, by focusing in on colonists and like America as like taking over the land and creating a new land, that was the narrative that was built as we developed the way that America was founded. So the way that the narrative was written about Native Americans, especially about like the natives coming and bringing us into Thanksgiving and this like happy-go-lucky view of what natives and colonists relationship was, it became popularized mostly because of the way that Thanksgiving became national holiday in 1863 during the Civil War when the country was very divided. And so the Pilgrims and the Native Americans was very conflicted, and so that conversation was not accurate. So, um, I've got some more information on it. I'm just kind of skipping through some things, so please feel free to go into more detail. So, the idea of the Indian, there's a really interesting link here, but the idea of how we stereotyped and categorized natives as savages, and that their culture was uncivilized was a very common propaganda piece for the natives. So there was a noble savage conversation that then went to a wretched Indian, which is like the idea of being cast out, of being like taken, take the land being stripped. We also have a level of cultural genocide that took place once the native folks have been pushed onto federal land. It's very complex. So I'm making a very complex issue very reductive, but these are things that are very important, and there's so many of them. But a couple things to just remember as you're reading some lit this week is that even though some of the lit that we have is placed in the 19th century, or even some of the origins are earlier than that, is that like the land has been very much outstripped from natives. And so there were 573 federally recognized tribes. But that's 573 tribes that have 573 different languages, beliefs, and stories. So just remember how vast and different Native culture is. Like it's hard to have 1 week of Native American literature because it is such an amazing and culturally rich experience. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end. So as you guys are exploring ghost dances this week, I want you to think about some of the readings in the ghost dance of spiritual movement. um, and it is a vision of Earth's renewal. It's an embodied hope during a time of crisis. And so the ghost dance was actually an incredibly powerful experience of a way to call forth ancestors. And so, some other things to pay attention to if you're going to be reading Life Among the Paiutes is like, how are they conveying fear in the storytelling? What is happening with this culture in that time period? There's also Zikalasa, and this is all about assimilation into Indian boarding schools. And she talks about loss of language, culture, and identity. And before I leave you today, I just wanted to give you a little taste of the ghost dance movement before you get into read your readings.
In the 19th, ancestor spirits to help restore their nation was such a threat to some that it became the catalyst for one of the bloodiest battles in American history. Join us as Paranormal TV offers the Native American point of view on ghosts and spirits.
It's difficult to say anything general about American Indian cultures because there are thousands of them and they exist over two continents of the planet.
There are over 200 languages still utilized today and over 500 tribes throughout North America alone that have very similar yet very distinct spiritual and cultural value systems.
If there's anything that can be said in general, it probably is that ghosts, or the word ghost, has a negative connotation. Most Native people will not talk about ghosts, and you find little traditions that have anything positive to say about the entity that we refer to as a ghost. However, the word spirit has a different connotation. Everything has spirit in it. Nature is filled with spirit.
Spirits are around us at all times. The spirits of our ancestors we call upon for strength and acknowledgement. When one passes on, it's a continuum, if you will, of life that's already been experienced. One is going on to the next life and will carry on from those aspects.
And the idea of
Okay, so as you're going through that, just kind of keep that in mind of like some of those ideas of like the ghost tradition and like what ghost tradition and like the ghost dance and the power of that with the culture. All right, before I leave you, take time to watch this TED Talk. It is very powerful, and I don't have time to show it to you in this video. But all of these things will help you come to a clear, interesting understanding of like all of the different like, nuances that we can see in this whole nation. So before I log off for today, please reach out if you've got any questions about anything. Read and annotate Joy Harjo's poem, remember and upload it. You can also do it on Harmonize. I'm sorry, not Harmonize, but on Canva. Remember to do your discussion board, and you're going to have your very first reading response this week. So I hope you enjoy delving into some Native American literature this week and really digging in. If you have anything that you need to reach out to me about, let me know. And on that note, I hope you all have a wonderful week one. Thanks. Bye.